most certainly see. Next, coming into something that another thing that I want to get into in here, we're not just going to dive into men's, but we're also going to dive into women's college basketball. And I'm going to tell you, the women's game rivals, if not better than the men's game. I mean, if you watch those games, the NCAA tournament a year ago, the women's by far was better in my opinion.
Oh, it was.
Baylor should have beat UConn. That was a foul.
I do. Yes. Oh, I definitely agree. Oh, I definitely agree with that. I remember they was all up in her face. I was like, come on now. So I am so excited to see this tournament as it's coming. And before we can get into the tournament, we got to talk about who do we think is the best player in the player of the year in women's college basketball. Nathan, I'm going to come to you first because I know.
Ladies first. I want to hear what Katie's got to say.
Okay, all right. Katie, what you got?
It's got to be Iowa's Caitlin Clark. She is just balling out. Has massive numbers every game. Like, even in her loss to their Michigan game, she had like 46 points, 10 assists. I mean, she's just out there, just insane playing for Iowa. So if it's not Caitlin Clark, it's highway robbery in my opinion. I mean, even my co-host for my ladies football show, Delilah, and I have been talking about her. And even Ash, there's no better player in NCAA women's basketball right now. There's some that could come close, but like I can't even put my own great player from Michigan, Naz Hillman, and her in the same category. Naz is a great player in the Big Ten, but you can't even give her Big Ten player of the year probably because of Caitlin being in the same conference. So, Caitlin's she's just phenomenal. She plays with such grit. When she's out on that court, she's balling. She could take on some of the NCAA men's players one-on-one and probably beat them.
Okay.
She's good. She's good, and she's a sassy player out there. She's confident. I like her a lot.
Okay. I can dig it. Nate, what you got?
I'm going to say it has to be Aaliyah Boston. South Carolina, they're the best basketball program in women's basketball right now. What Dawn Stanley has done, they have a 1A and a 1B team. I mean, Maryland couldn't even with the weapons, with the limitations we had. We're not running a match for them. I do feel like Aaliyah Boston in the media, this is just my opinion. I do feel like Aaliyah's not getting the same media recognition that a Caitlin Clark or a Paige Beckers for her injury has gotten. I do think that there has been narratives. I believe there are narratives that have been created to say Caitlin Clark should be player of the year. When I look at, Maryland played Iowa, okay? And I thought the way how it was constructed, some of the headlines was Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark had a shootout. Caitlin Clark had a triple-double with turnovers. Like, she got shut down in the second half. Like, you look at her, Iowa, they're fourth, but it's all Caitlin Clark. When you're putting up numbers like that, I kind of want to see what the others around you are like. She's pretty much leading her team in pretty much every damn category for Iowa. I feel like that's almost like NBA 2K numbers. Like, you want to play with many great players, and it kind of goes back to also too, like, what are they really building around her? When you look at Aaliyah Boston, when she's worked with the great Tim Duncan. A lot of people are saying, well, the team's stacked. No, if you look at her statistics from last year to this year, they have gotten better. So I don't think we can take away what Aaliyah's done. They're both great players. But if you're watching the games, like, without Aaliyah Boston, South Carolina, I don't think is truly the team that they are. And I think Aaliyah Boston's on a mission after last year. So, because even though I feel like Maryland is going to get their revenge, no, I'm just kidding. Maryland probably get the leading. That's on the conversation. But I'm going with Leah Boston because it's just right now it's Caitlin Clark and Leah Boston.
Right.
But if you just look at the game and look at the numbers, I mean, they're great. They're both great players, and it's going to be a great draft class for the WNBA. But
I agree.
It's definitely going to be. It has to be Leah Boston Player of the Year. Has to.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's definitely going to be interesting. As we know, last year's winner, Paige Beckers, has been hurt most of the year, so she has not been able to do that, dominate like she did a year ago. So yeah, it's gonna be a neck and neck race. I mean, honestly, in my opinion, I haven't seen enough of either of them to really cast a ballot. I did watch a lot more Leah Boston recently, watching some of the SEC, some of the women's basketball on that. And so, I mean, she's a monster, no doubt. Like, she's dominant, but I can't take anything away from Caitlin Clark. I mean, because like you said, she is leading in every statistical category. She is that team. If you take away Caitlin Clark from Iowa, they're not even Iowa anymore. They're nothing. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. They're both MVPs for their team. I think this is going to come down to potentially who goes farther, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's going to be something like that, kind of similar to it being like with Joe Burrow getting it over Dak Prescott, the comeback player of the year, kind of because he went farther, kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know. Because I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, but I'm very interested to see that because, like you said, Nate, like that draft class, watch out.
It's going to be something because last year's draft class for the WNBA,
it wasn't that great.
It's like,
you can admit it, Nate. It wasn't that great.
I mean, there's a couple girls I follow. Charlie Collier was drafted out of Texas. Kaiser Gondrzik, she's with the Chicago Sky. But Dejanay Carrington, Didi, right. There were some good players, but they're not someone that can go. They're going to take my franchise to the next level. They're just role players. So that arguably, they're disappointing.
Right.
Yeah. Quite interesting. Yo, but I cannot wait for this tournament to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the 25th of February. We are so close.
I'm ready for it.
So close to this tournament.